Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and the Season 1 of War Within is finally here, which means endgame content is finally on the table. From dungeons to raiding to PvP to delves to open world content, everything now gains massive upgrades when it comes to gear and progression. However, Season 1 is going to be split up into a Heroic Week and a Mythic Week, so not all the content will be available day 1, which creates a bit of a staggered release that does allow you to sample all of the forms of endgame progression before you find the type of content that you're most interested in, and gives you an opportunity to do some very limited early gearing before we dive deep into that mythic progression content. So for today's video, I wanted to do Season 1 gearing overview and all the different methods that you can use to gear out your character, from open world content as well as reputations to delves, dungeons, as well as raiding. Go over the PvP ecosystem as well as the crafting components, as well as the Great Vault and how you can maximize and take advantage of the Great Vault system to earn yourself fantastic gearing upgrades every single weekly reset. As always, if you guys want to see more War Within guides like these, go ahead and follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right into how to gear your character during Season 1 of War Within. So Season 1 is actually going to come in multiple phases. First, we're going to have the Heroic Week, which will be launching in a handful of days during September the 10th. Or 11th if you're in the EU region, with the following week being the Mythic launch week. During the Heroic Week, you'll have access to normal and heroic raids, Mythic 0 dungeons, delves, which is going to be one of the best gearing methods during that week, as well as conquest and bloody token gear for PvP. The following week will be a Mythic launch, which will feature Mythic raids, as well as a story mode for that raid if you want to see the ending of the conclusion if you're not going to be doing endgame group content, but also Mythic plus dungeon progression with an upgraded gearing for high-end dungeons, which is way better compared to previous expansions, as well as the opening of the Great Vault that week. Before we get into the PvE gearing section, you should be aware that War Within still retains the upgrading system of Dragonflight using Valor Stones as well as crests, though the names of these crests are going to be sort of Flight Stones, they're Valor Stones, instead of the Aspect crests or the Harbinger crests, but essentially the crests themselves and Valor Stones all are exactly the same as they were from back in the day. To upgrade a variety of items, you'll require Valor Stones, which are awarded from doing just about any activity, dungeons, delves, open world stuff, raiding, just about anything in the game awards you Valor Stones. So just by spending time in game and playing your favorite PvE or even a PvP activity allows you to earn Valor Stones fairly quickly. Now, crests come in a variety of different qualities, and they're awarded from different types of content. Like the basic weather crests are awarded from most open world activities as well as heroic dungeons. Harbinger crests are awarded from Mythic Keystone dungeons of +3 difficulty, the normal Nerva Palace, as well as equivalent tier difficulty of delves. Then we have Ruined Harbinger crests, which are awarded from Heroic Nerva Palace, Mythic Keystone dungeons between +4 and +8, as well as some of the higher tier delves. And then we have the final Gilded Harbinger crests, which are awarded from some of the highest difficulty content, such as Mythic Nerva Palace, as well as +9 and above difficulty Mythic plus Keystone dungeons. And all of these crests as well as Valor Stones are used to upgrade items to a higher difficulty. So let's say you're going through a normal Nerva Palace and you get a weapon from that dungeon on normal difficulty, or rather on the champion track. A part of that champion track will require card Harbinger crests in order to get it to the highest levels of the champion track, but then you could use a couple of crests from the Ruined Harbinger side of things in order to upgrade that item from normal quality to heroic quality, or at least heroic equivalent quality. So using Valor Stones as well as crests, you can actually take the item level at its base level and upgrade it beyond its base into the next track of gear. So it's a system that allows you to take some of your best installed items like best trinkets or best weapons and upgrade them to a higher level. So even if you're someone who does heroic raiding and never does mythic raiding, you can actually upgrade your gear to a higher level as long as you have the right set of currencies. First, we're going to start things off with some of the basic ways of getting gear, and then getting into some of the more endgame content and more granular crafting methods, starting with open world activities. Open world continues to deliver on starter gear. This is something that a lot of you have already been able to do so far for the first few weeks of the expansion's launch, and the gear from open world does see a few upgrades. You will still have access to world quests as well as open world activities such as Theater Troop in the Isle of Dorn. You get the Awakened Machine as well as Snuffling activity. You have the Spreading the Light, as well as the weekly quest for one of the leaders of the Ashka Head faction, as well as the special assignments of that zone, which awards roughly around 571 item level adventurer track gear. At least majority of this activities do. But with the launch of season 1, we'll also have access to some world bosses, so you'll be able to slay world bosses. There's 4 of them that are going to be on a weekly rotation, and the gear from those world bosses is going to be of champion track quality. Now, no matter the boss that you're fighting against, the loot tables on all these bosses is about the same, and the only thing that really changes are going to be the ranks, with every single world boss having a different rank that he can drop. But we also should not forget the renowned reward tracks. If you haven't progressed your way through some of the different factions, then there's a good chance you haven't been able to collect your veteran gear, which you can buy from each of the renowned quartermasters. And as you progress further up into the actual renowned tracks of these factions, you'll be able to unlock champion track gear from every single one of them, and towards the later levels you'll be able to unlock a heroic reward, which is an enchanted crest for crafting your items that allows you to create gear of a minimum 606 track quality, which is very equivalent to some of the heroic rating gear, but the actual item levels can go higher than 606 as well. So if you're someone who's working on open world content, definitely start working on your renowned track as well, and look out for any world quests that award you additional extra reputation with all these different factions, because long term they can award you even more better gear upgrades. Another form of in-game progression that'll be available as of this week is the delves with higher tiers. So far we've been capped at tier 3, but as you get to higher tier of delves, you actually unlock better gear. Especially be on the lookout for bountiful delves. You will require to use a restored coffer key in order to unlock the end of delve rewards for those delves, but the rewards are more than worth it. Tier 5 and 6 delves will award you veteran track gear, while tier 7 through 11 will award you champion track at the end of the delve run. All those delves will also help fill out your Great Vault as well, and you should do them at tier 8 in order to fill out your vault full of hero track endgame gear. Like I said before, you will require coffer keys in order to unlock some of those bountiful delves, but the good thing is majority of those coffer keys can be obtained from some of the open world group activities, as well as world quests that award you coffer key shards, where you can combine 100 key shards in order to create a coffer key, as well as open world events called Memories of Azeroth, though those you'll be able to obtain after completing some of those bountiful delves. From there on, we can move on to dungeons, which is what I'm really excited about, and the season 1 set of dungeons is going to be very similar to the Dragonflight's dungeons, where during season 1 we'll have access to 4 of the War Within dungeons, specifically being Arakara, the City of Echoes, City of Threads, the Dawnbreaker, as well as a Stone Vault, with the 4 other dungeons being from older expansions, such as the Shadowlands dungeons of Necrotic Wake, as well as Tir-Nasai. A Cataclysm dungeon of Grimbatol, which has seen a ton of different changes from the boss models, as well as a variety of different enemy mechanics. And a Battle of Azeroth dungeon of Siege of Borealis, which also saw a couple of changes, with them normalizing the pathing, so you no longer have an alliance route and a horde route for the dungeon, you just have a one same route, no matter your faction. As well as some of the bosses actually have had a few new mechanics added, and the gear upgrades are going to be a lot better on that Mythic quality difficulty. Now, during the Heroic Week, we'll only have access to Mythic 0 dungeons, which award veteran track gear, but we'll be able to earn we unlock Mythic Plus dungeons of +2 and higher difficulty the next week during the Mythic Week. And the gear upgrades for those Mythic Plus dungeons have been greatly upgraded, allowing players to earn Mythic track items for completing +10 difficulty dungeons. Next on our table is the Nurubar Palace raid, which comes in 4 difficulties, but 3 of them will be available during Heroic Week. We have the Raid Finder, we have the Normal, as well as Heroic. Now, each and every one of these bosses do get harder with higher difficulties, but the rewards also increase, with Heroics dropping your hero track items, which are further upgradable with the Valor Stones and the Crest system. And the entirety of the raid will be available all the way from the first boss to the very last boss, with a variety of different items, but also it is going to be the best place to get some tier pieces, as the raid bosses themselves drop tier set items that you can convert into tier set gear immediately. Like I said, LFR, Normal, and Heroic difficulties will be available during the first week of Season 1, with the following week unlocking Mythic track gear, which offers some of the best, highest item level pieces of gear available, as well as a unique mount if you do end up defeating the final boss, Queen Ansarek, on Mythic difficulty. And when you defeat a certain number of bosses from the Nurubar Palace, you unlock a slot in the Great Vault, with the quality of that Great Vault slot gear depending on the difficulty of the defeated bosses. Now that we got all the PvE content out of the way, you should also be aware that the Catalyst will be available day 1 of the Season 1 opening. And the Catalyst will gain a charge every other week. So we'll be getting a charge during the first week, then we'll be getting our second charge during the third week, which allows players to have an easier time getting their tier set bonuses, especially if you're not planning on participating within endgame raiding content. What the Catalyst allows you to do is slot in Season 1 War Within items of at least veteran track and convert them into tier set item equivalents, though only certain slots can be turned into tier set bonus items. Helms, shoulders, chest pieces, legs, and gloves are the only items that can maintain tier set bonuses, so don't be dropping in bracers or boots because those have zero opportunity for them to be turned into tier set items. It also has to be items from dungeons, delves, as well as raids. It can't be crafted items that can be turned with the Catalyst. So you should be very careful when using the Catalyst because you will have a limited amount of charges on these. The best advice for the Catalyst though is to at least do a full normal run of the Nuremberg Palace raid to see if you can get any tier set bonuses. And for some classes, getting a 2-set bonus is going to be massive. So if you are somebody who benefits greatly from a 2-set bonus, if not a complete 4-set bonus, then getting a 2-set bonus early may give you an edge during the first week of Season 1 launching. As you participate in delves, dungeons, and raids, you also get to fill out the Great Vault, which awards you items at the end of the week or during the next week's Tuesday or Wednesday regional reset. The more bosses in the Nuremberg Palace you defeat, the more slots you unlock, and the higher the difficulty of those bosses, the better the rewards. Same thing for dungeons, whether you complete heroic, mythic, or time walking, or mythic plus dungeons, the higher the difficulty, and the more dungeons, the more slots you get. Same thing with delves. The more delves you complete, which you should try to complete at tier 8 for the best possible rewards, the more slots you get. Now, the Great Vault functions exactly the same as it did in Dragonflight and previous expansions. You could fill the vault with more choices of these items. However, every week you always get to walk away with only one of them. So the more slots you fill gives you more opportunities for some of your better items, but you still walk away with just one item. So during the first week, at least for Heroic Week, try to do everything from Nuremberg Palace, get your heroic dungeons out of the way, get your delves out of the way, and fill out the slot with as many slots as possible for a chance at some of the best and biggest upgrades for you. But as the season goes on, as long as you're focusing on dungeons or raids or delves at the highest possible potential difficulty, that is how you'll be able to just focus on the content that you want to participate in and get the best items from that content by doing the most challenging versions of that content. However, if you do end up getting some from Great Vault, but none of the items are good, you can always swap them out for Algari tokens of merit and then trade them at the token exchange next to the Great Vault. Now, the token exchange has a variety of items from Valor Stones that you can purchase, gold, which are not the best investment for those tokens. You can get yourself 15 carved Harbinger crests or even 15 ruined Harbinger crests, although still not the greatest way to spend that currency. But below that, we also have Fractured Spark of Omens, so if you're behind on your crafted gear, this is another place where you can get a fragment of the spark, or better yet, a Nerubian Gem Weaver, which allows you to add sockets to Season 1 items for endgame progression. In Dragonflight, you get 2 tokens per slot filled, so if let's say you kill 2 bosses in Nuremberg Palace, do 1 heroic dungeon, and complete 2 delves, that will give you altogether, if you're not meaning to grab any of these items, that's 6 tokens that you could take from the weekly vault reset. Another way to boost your overall item level is to craft some new gear and items. Now, PvE crafted items all will require a spark, especially if you're trying to get some of the higher level items, maybe some of the specific embellished items that are going to be best in slot for your character, but you will require sparks of omens. To get a spark, you first need to do weekly activities to get a fractured spark of omens. You'll be able to find that weekly activity usually in Dornogal, right next to the Dornogal iLvL Flightmaster, kind of like in this area over here next to the inn. But once you have 2 sparks, you use a few Valor Stones to combine them together into a fresh spark, and then you can craft items using those sparks. Now, to create items will require you some reagents, which could all be bought in the auction house, or it could be farmed if you're just skinning or mining or leatherworking or tailoring. And you also want to use enchanted crests in order to upgrade the difficulty as well as the quality of those items. Otherwise, they start out at basic 593 quality, equivalent to normal raiding gear, but they could always get upgraded to higher level, especially if the crafter has the proficiency in that craft. Now, to create these enchanted crests, you'll first need to trade out your crests, like the actual crests you earn from endgame content, and create a nascent crest. At the enchanting table, there'll be a vendor that allows you to trade your actual currency of crests for a nascent crest, which is an item that's a crafting reagent that is necessary to create the enchanted crests. Once you have the nascent crest, you'll then need to get some storm dust, gleaming shards, and refuelant crystals, which all of them can be bought on the auction house. They'll place a work order towards an enchanter to be able to craft the enchanted gilded crest or ruined crest, whichever one you're trying to get. Once you have your enchanted crest, when you go to craft the actual items you're looking for, you can then empower them with optional reagents, being those crests, to increase the item level of those items. And the quality of those items will depend on the proficiency of that profession to whoever you're trying to get the craft to. Now, all you need is somebody who's proficient in that profession that isn't willing to rip you off and is willing to charge you a fair price. Crafters charge various different prices, so it's kind of really up to you to figure out on a fair price with the crafter, or if you want to start working on those professions on your alt and craft items for yourselves, that's what I plan to do for the most part for the Season 1 content. But let's not forget PvP content, which is its own ecosystem. So if you want a PvP, you don't really need to do any PvE content. No dungeons, no raids, no delves, and you can simply just do PvP in order to get the best PvP gear. And only PvP gear should primarily be used within PvP, since it has the PvP scaling. Now, there's going to be a variety of different pieces of PvP gear you can get, from the basic honor gear, which you get from earning honor for doing any of the casual PvP activities, so think skirmishes, think brawls, or even battlegrounds. And this gear scales up to item level 626 within arenas and battlegrounds. Now, you'll notice that this shield does have an explorer rank, and it looks like you can rank it up, but ranking up PvP gear does not change its scaling level. So as long as you have the item, it scales up to the highest item level possible within BGs, and ranking it up does not affect that scaling at all. It's mostly just for players that want to, let's say, get PvP gear, but also want to use that gear in dungeons and raids, and that's kind of the benefit for it. But if you're just looking to PvP, you don't need to upgrade these items whatsoever. There's the basic honor gear, but then there's also conquest gear, which as of right now it's not available, but conquest gear can be earned through participating in rated PvP content. So you're looking at arenas, you're looking at RBGs, you're looking at solo RBGs or solo queue arenas, as well as certain quests that'll become available during Season 1 that could also award you conquest. So another way to gear for PvP is by participating in world PvP activities, and world PvP objectives have a chance of dropping you world PvP gear. Basic tier 1 world PvP war mode gear is basically equivalent to honor gear. The item level scaling is slightly different, but its world item level is a little bit higher. So in PvP content, it's essentially just as strong as honor gear, but when combating PvE threats or world threats, it's a little bit better at scaling against those threats specifically. But that's just how you get the tier 1 basic war mode gear. But if you want the tier 2 war mode gear, which is equivalent to conquest type of gear in terms of scaling as well as power gains, those you'll be able to purchase through bloody tokens from the war mode quartermaster. Bloody tokens will function very similarly to conquest points. So as honor gear is something that's easily obtained through casual PvP, conquest you can only obtain through rated PvP, and bloody tokens you'll be able to obtain through very special assignments within war mode, or only through special activities for war mode. But the gear that you gain is going to be equivalent to that of conquest in terms of its quality. And bloody tokens will have a cap very similar to that of conquest, like how much bloody tokens you can earn for the week. You'll have a cap for conquest as well as bloody tokens. So it's probably a pretty good idea to mix up a bit of open world PvP as well as rated instance PvP in order to maximize your gear gains during the first 2 weeks of Season 1. However, we're not done there, because PvP crafting is very different than crafting PvE items, because PvP crafting is again part of its own ecosystem this time around. All the recipes for PvE gear can now be purchased on the competitor's recipes vendor, and all of it just costs honor. And once you get the recipe for blacksmithing or tailoring or a leatherworking character, you earn that recipe for the rest of the expansion. And then you can continue using that recipe to upgrade and make better gear in following seasons. All the crafted gear reagents are also bought through honor or conquest, so you just need to make sure you have enough of the currency to be able to actually craft some of these items. And all of the different reagents to upgrade the quality as well as the scaling factor of those PvP items will be purchasable only through things such as honor, as well as Conquest. Also, to craft PvP gear, you no longer need a spark, so you're not locked behind a spark for a weekly open world activities in order to be able to craft PvP gear. As long as you have the currency, you can start immediately crafting all of those PvP items. And to upgrade those items further, like to add sockets on those gear, you can actually buy sockets directly for honor, which takes a lot of honor to do so, and lots of stocked up honor for vicious bloodstones. But once you have enough honor, then you can simply buy sockets and slap them directly on those better crafted pieces or on the conquest or bloody token pieces in order to better itemize your character and optimize your gear to a next tier degree. So when I said PvP gearing is its own ecosystem, to really try to make it its own ecosystem where you don't need to do dungeons or raiding or open world activities or any weeklies within the rest of the War Within content. If you just want to focus on PvP activities, getting the PvP stats as well as the PvP currencies, you can get all of those items and create yourself the best geared character just through PvP alone. But with that being said, that's going to be basically the entirety of how to gear a character during Season 1. If you're someone who's going to be focusing on PvE gearing during the first few weeks, I recommend doing all of your delves and trying to get them to tier 8 and saving those bountiful keys for level 8 delves. Do all of your Mythic 0 dungeons to collect as much gear and as many quests, and try to get your normals and heroics out of the way to get as many pieces of tier and items. From there on, once Mythic season opens, you can either focus on Mythic Plus or Mythic rating progression, or a little bit of both. But don't forget on delves, as they'll continue to offer gear upgrades. If you're somebody who's not a fan of group content, the delves and open world activities will continue to supply you with additional rewards, which gives you more than enough stuff to work on even as a solo player. And for PvP players, you have your own ecosystem to participate in. So if you don't want to do open world content, no delves, no dungeons, just focus on PvP, getting those bloody tokens, farming up the conquest, and farming up that rating in order to get yourself better gear and items. But with that being said, I do want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and hope all of you enjoyed. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community if you got any questions regarding Season 1 and how to efficiently gear your character. Also, let me know what are your thoughts and comments down below. Which activity are you going to be working on? Are you going to be one of the solo players working on delves and working on all the different delve achievements? Are you planning on doing endgame group content, and what are you focusing on? Mythic Plus or rating specifically? Or are you thinking of making Season 1 of War Within priority season for PvP? Let me know all your thoughts of what exactly you're going to be diving into in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.